Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmitz.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Get your popcorn ready as Husker basketball back at it, PBA. We are loaded up, excited for Nebraska basketball. Should be an intriguing, high-flying, high-level season. Will it mean dancing sometime in March? Time will tell with that. We'll dive plenty heavy into Nebraska basketball with longtime Nebraska assistant and Hall of Fame high school basketball coach Jeff Smith. Key cog in those 90s glory years, a golden era with Coach Nee. Well, Jeff Smith, my color partner and great coach at Southeast for so many years, going to be with us in an hour to kind of preview and get his take on the Big Red basketball season here for 2021-2022. In 20 minutes, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, his takeaway and take on yesterday's news with Scott Frost's retention and then Scott Frost's dismissal of 4 assistants. You've had about 24 hours to sleep on it and still plenty of time for you to get in and react. And we have kind of moved on to, what's happened with the changes on the staff to what is next. Who is going to be filling those positions after Black Friday against Iowa? And you've had a chance to weigh in. Your knee-jerk and then your long-term take, right? Is your knee-jerk reaction to Frost's retention the same as how you feel 24 hours later? Is this going to work? History says no. No. Now, you have a couple of instances that were pointed out by Dirk Chatlin, and we talked to one of these guys he was talking about, Gary Barnett, pretty regularly about, kind of heading into a year 5. Gary Pinkel, also an example where Missouri stuck with him, and, of course, Bill McCartney. And Coach Barnett's told that story where they went 1-10. 1-10 after a 5-6 season in Boulder. They were so close to getting to a bowl. But they went 1-10, I think, in year 3 or year 4 or some ungodly number. And the athletic director at the time, because he had time, gave him all extensions after a 1-10 year. I think Coach Mack, if you've ever heard him on the show a while back, I mean, he's kind of intense. He's kind of loud. He kind of works the room. And they were all surprised about getting, the AD was coming in to fire him. Here's an extension. You guys, I see what you're doing. And I think Trev Alberts sees what's going on. And here's the other side of that coin. And we'll hear from some of Trev Alberts' commentary on the network last night, because I thought Trev was absolutely phenomenal with his explanation, taking this head on and then dealing with the feedback and the flack, because there's a lot of Nebraskans out there that have seen enough in 4 years and don't believe it'll be any different in a 5th season. And there's some Nebraskans that say, okay, look at all the close losses. Scott Frost is right there. All you need to do is, get better on offense. Easier said than done. And as I've looked at things, maybe a little different take here, but I think it was... You can say all you want for recruiting that you needed to get rid of the 4 assistants if you were going to go into homes here by the 28th of November. You're still going to need to have people. It's going to be Scott Frost in that living room. There's damage control that's going on with the small number of commits, with some of them that were recruited by other people. You have a very unhappy offensive line room right now. Whoever's working with them, they'll listen to, they'll do their best. But you got a lot of offensive linemen that are really probably ticked off that Greg Austin's not there. And Greg Austin was easy. The O-line was easy to blame and get after. But the reality is this, to me, as I look at Nebraska's offensive struggles And Greg Austin's going to get a better job. Greg Austin's going to get a really good job. Greg Austin's a Husker, and we'll hear about loyalty because Nebraska was loyal to Scott to give him a fifth year. You can argue Scott was not loyal to his assistants that came with him to this point when it came to getting rid of them before the season ends, and that's a fair take. But the point of this is to get into what's been the problems, the offensive line. Nebraska's playing, redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores right now. That's never happened here. And what's being asked of this offensive line versus what they can do, what are they good at a young age, never really got on the same page this year. So Scott Frost is going to put an offensive game plan together with his quarterback and going to call pass routes for a revamped wide receiving core. And it's not going to be great because your protection is not good. You're not emphasizing or getting downhill or good at running the football. Maybe you never tried to be good at running the football, right? You've got a run game coordinator, you got an offensive coordinator, and you've got the head coach that's also an offensive coordinator. You got too much going around here in circles with, hey, here's what I think can happen if we want to run the football. And I'm just hypothetically saying this. Thanks, Greg. Here's what we're going to do when we call run plays. Well, maybe or maybe not. That's what Greg Austin suggested or didn't suggest. Here's what my guys can do to block. Here's what my guys can do to get you going in the run game. Scott, what do you think of that? I'm going to go with what I think's cool. Potentially. I don't know. It's just a situation where Nebraska needs to find the right answer here in year 5 if there wants to be a year 6. And is year 5 going to be any better? Time will tell with that. But I thought you could have maybe waited till the end of the year to make your changes. I think the coaching fraternity is going to react pretty poorly to the sacrificial lambs that have been on your staff. It's your offense. And you got rid of guys that were coaching your offense. But maybe it flips around. The reality is this, too, with Scott Frost. Is Scott okay with being boring? Scott's never been boring a day in his life when it comes to play calling and the offenses he's run. He has had incredible offenses at Oregon with Mariota and Chip and Central Florida and McKenzie. They were awesome. They are fun. They're must-see TV. Guess what, dude? You're going to win and live a long time in the Big Ten being boring. Are you okay with being boring? And part of Trev talking about leadership and management, are you going to be able to step out of the way, delegate as a program leader with whoever else you bring in while it's really your ass? That's going to be the hard question. Can you be hands-off or help the situation with planning and strategy with a different offense that's downhill? And some of us will see it, will believe it when we see it, with Nebraska really truly devoting to a ground game and continuing to play bumper cars through 3 quarters for a 4th quarter payoff. Nebraska did that against Oklahoma, but Scott needs to be able to absolutely truly change and be okay with being boring. Let's go to the phones real quick before we hear from Trev Alberts. Russ is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Russ, thanks for hanging on. Go ahead.
Hey, Schmitty, thanks for taking my call. Long-time listener. And
thank you, man.
Hey, I tell you what, I really like your show. Specifically out there, I kind of had heard rumors that maybe a couple of the coaches were wanting to leave, not necessarily the Nebraska guys. I don't know that, but I know I had heard that there was a couple coaches that actually had wanted out. So I think it's there's got to be some mutualism there. I don't think it was necessarily that Scott was cutting all 4 of these go. I think there was a couple of them that were wanting to get out and try something new, and weren't really getting along with everything. And I guess that can happen after being, together after a while and going through all these struggles. So, I wouldn't put it all on Scott for just cutting these 4 loose. I know, there's probably a couple of them that were wanting out and wanting to do something different, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely, I don't you know what? I don't think you're wrong, Russ. But there's you can wait till the end of the year, I guess, is my point. It looks like you're just kind of tossing them out because Thursday's garbage day.
Right. Well, I think it has to do with recruiting too. I mean, they're wanting to.
How are you going to be able to sell recruiting though if it's maybe just a year deal for the head coach?
Yeah, I guess it's just good faith.
Absolutely. I mean, let's if you're a Nebraska fan, let's hope it works out. Absolutely.
There was a lot of speculation that there should be an announcement one way or the other Monday, so that the kids at least knowing moving forward, whether Scott's going to be here or not. Now, all that other stuff's going to have to fall in line because who knows what type of offense we're going to run, et cetera. But, I guess we just roll with it at this point, and if nothing else, it gives Trev 12 more months, 15 more months to, a year more to figure out what the next plan is. If, hopefully if this doesn't work out, hopefully it does. We've waited long enough, and, Scott can give
Russ, let me ask you this. Where were you at? Did you want him back?
I've been on the fence the whole time. I go back and forth. When we lose on Saturday, it would be get rid of Scott,
No,
and then
you and the rest of the state, man.
Then I'd get back, and then I'd sit back on Sunday and Monday and cool off and go, we've been close. So instead of being blown out all these games with the big teams, we're hanging tough, and maybe we just need a couple tweaks.
No, I get you.
And so I've been riding the fence, but anyhow, I guess that's where I'm at, and I guess we just roll with it. But I guess the main point I was trying to make was I think there was a couple guys that probably didn't want to be here anymore. And, I guess in any relationship, you go through your struggles. So, don't put it all on, I would say don't put it all on Scott for just cutting these 4 loose to save his own hide. I think there was some mutual agreement there about who wanted to stay and who wanted to go. But, who knows, Held and Austin,
Russ,
maybe those
thanks.
guys wanted to stick around. But thanks for taking my call.
I appreciate you listening, man. Thanks for the input. Can get in at 466-3776 or 800-825-5865. Kaz is coming up here in about an hour 15. Get his take on things as well. So we'll take some more of your calls, more of your thoughts on this. And no, it just doesn't look good with that. And yeah, if you're coaches and if you're disgruntled, I'll say this, Greg's the only coach that's kind of self-made on this staff. Everyone else has been with Scott. Becton was retained from Central Florida with the O'Leary era, I'm pretty sure. But Greg's been in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly, and he was at other spots. Greg's had offers, and he's stayed at Nebraska, is where I'm going. And then to get dismissed like that. Now, I don't know that Greg Austin would have been back for another season or not, kind of to Russ's point. Let's hear real quick from Trev Alberts. Do we have time? We might have time on the decision. This again from the network last night to keep Scott.
Well, first of all, we're really excited that that Scott's going to be back, and I've really enjoyed this year. I didn't know Scott well when I took the job. We didn't really overlap, and just like with any relationship, I think over time and you gain some trust with each other, I think you can have some more intimate conversations and detailed conversations about a program that we both love very dearly. I'm not one to make big, bold proclamations, and I prefer to have, we don't publicly determine who's going to win a football game in the middle of the second quarter. We play all 4 quarters and see what's on the scoreboard. But the challenge is with some of the changes in college athletics, obviously, with an early signing date and a transfer portal. I do think that at this point in an off week when coaches are going to head out and do some recruiting, it was important that we sit down and discuss the future.
So that was Trev Alberts. Last thought from Trev here on changes that were made on staff and changes that Scott's going to make with his system.
there was no question to me in making some observations that there's some things that we can do differently and we can get better. I want to first say that Scott and I both understand that our results have not been what they need to be. Nobody is suggesting that where we stand is currently comfortable and or acceptable long term. But I also think, in just observing and watching some things that are very, very important to me in terms of the unity of the players, the work ethic, the togetherness, those things are there. And so I've talked about incremental progress, and I've seen that in some key areas. I also want to tell you and very transparently say that the Minnesota and Purdue losses were difficult for me. And they shake some of your confidence. Proud of the response, proud of how they played against Ohio State. We don't buy into moral victories here, but I do think that, some of those very detailed, fundamental things about attention to detail and organizational skills, those types of things, Scott and I have discussed, and I believe that Scott has a good plan and a vision around that. And I think some of that small incremental progress can continue to move forward as we move forward into next year. I just think that these last 2 weeks against Wisconsin and Iowa, we owe it to our student athletes to have 100% focus, both coaches and administratively, to support their chance at winning those two games.
Trev Alberts. We'll have a little bit more from Trev. We'll hear from Fred Hoiberg as Nebraska tips off their season tonight. Mitch Sherman on the way with The Athletic, his reaction to the news yesterday. More from you on the phones and, of course, with email, chris@HailVarsity.com. Hail Varsity continues.
Back
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio lesson?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for hanging out on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Connor Clark. We welcome in Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, thanks for the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to kind of move forward now that some answers have been laid out in the short term here with Nebraska football, and hoops is around the corner. So, yeah, it's I guess on to a bye week now that the news drop happened yesterday, and want to get your take and reaction and great column on The Athletic yesterday, Mitch, with just some of your reaction. But as we talk to you here, are you surprised that Scott and Trevor back together for another year?
Well, that's a complex question.
No, exactly.
It's really not a hard question. It's a hard answer. I am not surprised based on the way that things were pointing coming out of the Ohio State game. If you'd have told me at the beginning of the year that they would be staring at a 3-win season and they were going to run it back in 2022, yeah, a little surprised there. But, there's a lot of context. There's a lot to take into account about the way this year has gone and the things that Trev has learned about the program and the way that he feels. And there are a number of other issues also involved with the finances and various items that involve the direction of Nebraska football and the future of Nebraska football. So I will say on Monday at 2 p.m. when the news came, no, I was not surprised, but I was also prepared for it to go the other direction and there to be no announcement this week and for this thing to play out after Black Friday, in which case I don't know that we would have received the news that we did. It may have been the other side of things. But, all that said, I'm giving you a long answer here, but
it's okay.
Everything that we learned yesterday falls in line, I think, with the way that this season has gone in that the choice to restructure his deal, it goes hand in hand with this decision. I don't know that it would have worked if they had just said, let's bring it back and we're not going to make the kinds of changes that we did. This all worked in conjunction, obviously, making changes to the offensive staff, restructuring the contract, and then the decision to bring Scott back in 2022.
Mitch Sherman is with us from The Athletic, Hail Varsity Radio, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Let's get into the restructuring, and it's down to $4 million for 2022, and it's also now a $7.5 million buyout, no longer $15 million. And Scott was okay with that. Just covering Scott as long as I have, and also seeing him in college when I first got into this. I mean, we're talking about a really prideful, confident guy, and now not only have you been brought up in front of the masses about an NCAA investigation, you've had your AD talking about confidence shaking losses on the network last night. But oh, by the way, we're going to chop some of your zeros in half financially. Trev had to be pretty confident with that offer and say, hey, look, the kids didn't quit on you. They're still playing hard. There's some things that need to change. And by the way, part of that's your salary. Was that a move you were expecting from Trev or thought maybe in play because of what Michigan did earlier with Harbaugh?
Yeah, I had thought that, yes, that there was a possibility that the announcement would be accompanied by some rework terms of the contract, yes. And part of that absolutely has to do with the fact that we've seen this in college football before, and there's a precedent right within the Big Ten for Michigan, and Michigan did this a year ago. You talk about pride, and I think pride is what brought him back. The alternative to accepting the restructured deal was to walk with $20 million. I believe. I don't believe that Scott had that was the choice. You can take the new deal, which I'm sure was negotiated, or you have a $20 million buyout. And he chose the option that very well may pay him less money. And that is a move that shows a lot of pride in his own work and pride in being the coach at Nebraska. I think there are a lot of coaches who, seeing this offer, would have said, I'm going to go with the option with the guaranteed money, where I know I'm going to make $20 million. He may have to, we don't know what the terms of the contract are and where the buyout goes after 2022. That will all come out. But he may have to coach 3 years, at least 2, maybe 3 or more, to recoup the $20 million that he could have earned just by saying no thanks to Trev's offer this week. So he clearly has put his money where his mouth is in after his comments that he wants to be here very badly. We know that now. There's no question, and that is a feather in his cap that he can use in bringing in coaches, that he can use on the recruiting trail. If you want to see how badly Scott Frost wants to be the coach at Nebraska, look at the $8.5 million that he potentially left on the table over the next 12 months just to get the opportunity to do this for one more year and not spend 2022 on the golf course.
Can he be a better leader? Can he change and get more hands-on or a little bit better with attention to detail and be more CEO-ish? Because it is hard. The guy loves calling plays, designing plays, but you've seen other areas of the football team falter because he's not been paying attention to it or wasn't supervising, so to speak. So he's going to have to go hire a new OC, new O-line, new offense. Got to get boring and ground and pound in the Big Ten and time of possession. That's your formula. At least that's what's worked for Wisconsin and Iowa. How hard is that going to be, do you think, for him to change what he's done? And that's going to be a high-flying act offensively that's been really good for a lot of years.
Yeah, I don't think he makes the decision to take the restructured deal if he's, unless he is committed to making the kind of change that he and Trev Alberts both believe can lead them to have the best chance to be successful in the Big Ten. And if they've decided that is to be more run-oriented, more time of possession oriented, then that's what it'll be, and that's the direction he'll go with the moves that he makes on the offensive coaching side. If it's to continue to be RPO and to look to do some different things and be an offense that's a bit of an outlier in the Big Ten, that they feel that's their best chance of success, maybe they look at their personnel and they say, this has got to be a quick fix. So we can't change the entire offense. Not that they would need to change it to be ball control. Not that they would need to change the personnel entirely to be ball control. I think they have the players who can do that. But they're going to go with the system that fits their personnel the best. Because this is not a 3-year deal. This is not probably even a 2-year fix. This is how can we be good in 2022. So that involves the offense. It involves the role that Frost is going to take in overseeing this team. I do think you'll see him in more of an executive kind of role where he walks around, where he takes a vested interest in special teams, where he has a special teams coordinator. And he allows his offensive coordinator to call the plays, to run the show, to bring in his scheme, maybe bring in his quarterback. We'll find out more. We'll get to hear from Scott tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he'll share some of his vision for what this offense is going to look like in 2022. But some of that, of course, is going to come from the new coordinator too, and I think it's going to be a few weeks before they have that entirely settled.
Well, and I'm wondering here what's the direction for a coordinator and O-line coach? And just from a jumbled standpoint, Mitch, how jumbled do you think the offense, it looked like it because of their sputtering and inconsistency, but I think of the players, right? I think of the players with this offensive system and what they were asked to do versus what they can do. And I look at Austin, I look at Mario, I look at Lubick, and I look at Scott. That's a lot of ideas, and then let's narrow it down and figure out what works on 3rd and 3 in the red zone. And it wasn't working. New faces, new names. That's got to gel pretty good, don't you think? Here between now and in Ireland.
Yeah, and a lot of this is going to depend too on what the roster looks like with returning players. This is an age that's different than any time when Nebraska's gone through staff changes, whether it was assistant coaches or a head coaching change, and that the guys have the opportunity to go and transfer, and it's more attractive because they don't have to sit out a year if it's the first time doing it. So there's all kinds of players in that locker room who I'm sure right now are uncertain about what their future holds because they had strong connections to whether it be it Mario or Ryan Held or Greg Austin or Matt Lubick. And they have decisions to make. So, I wrote in my piece that is out today on The Athletic that Sean Beckton, he's got an extremely important job, and he's the one offensive assistant who's left. Fortunately for Scott Frost in Nebraska, he may be the best recruiter on that staff, and I think he has got to be tasked with taking all of those pass catchers under his wing, and the tight ends, the young tight end Thomas Fedoni to start with, and then all of those receivers too, and sell them on what his vision and Scott's vision and the future offensive assistant coach's vision are going to be for this system. Because if they end up losing a big chunk of those pass catchers, you can have any quarterback in the country, and it's not going to work. Notice there are not receivers. There are not a lot of receivers in Nebraska's recruiting class as it stands today. And I don't believe that they're going to be able to entirely rebuild their receiving room with transfers through the portal. It's got to be the guys who are there. And there's a lot of talent there among that receiving core with eligibility to return. But they have to return in order to give Nebraska a chance. So there are some important conversations ahead between, and I would say Beckton's the point man, but of course Frost too, and then when they have the new offensive staff in place, between those guys and your players like Xavier Betts and Oliver Martin and Alante Brown and Will Nixon and the three true freshman receivers and Thomas Fedoni, and even a guy like Omar Manning. He's got a year left if he wants to come back and play.
Well, I think Beckton's good stuff. We'll see what can get done. Mitch, you have a good rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for a few minutes today, bud.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
All right, we'll take some more thoughts here on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Coming up, Jeff Smith, former Nebraska basketball assistant, Hall of Fame high school coach, get his take on the Big Red at PBA this season. Rick Kaczenski, Coach Kaz, coming up in hour 2. Thank you to Mitch Sherman. Numbers to get on open phones here till 5 at 466-3776 or 800-825-5865. A couple more thoughts from Trev Alberts as he was on the network here with Scott Frost. So we've been talking about a couple of different things, what's next and will it work? And when we talk about some of those names to fill the void of the assistant coaches, because that'll be key. Who's coming in? Who can they recruit? Who can they land? Who can they get in the portal? Who can they keep from transferring, to Mitch's point? All those things got to be a reality. And with Trev talking to the World Herald and Journal-Star last night, Trev made it known, look, I didn't mandate Scott fire any coaches at all. No coaches, especially no individual coaches. I wasn't part of it. This is Scott's plan. This is Scott's vision. And away we go with where Nebraska football is going direction-wise. And let's get into standard for a moment, right? What's the standard? And next year's got to be a bowl season, okay? And next year can't be limping into a bowl season. Let's just call it like we think it needs to be. You've been patient as a Nebraska fan. God love you. And a lot of you are patient with your quarterback that won a national championship for you that is now going to get a 5th year. And look, I'm okay. I'm okay with a 5th year. I said a week ago he needs a 5th year. And to be as good as he can be, because I know how smart of a coach he is, right? I know what I've seen and I've followed with him from his previous stop. So there's talent there. There's enough talent there that everyone was lined up to go get it handled and make him their next head guy back in 2017. And I also look at the league he came from. And I was the first to say, okay, man, the AAC's money. It's a great league. Look at Matt Rule. He's now in the NFL. Look at Coach Herman, right? I think what we've seen from the AAC is they have had uber talented squads in some really nice recruiting hotbeds. Not Frost's fault, not Herman's fault, not Rule's fault. Not who's the cat at Virginia Tech? Fuentes? He was at Memphis, right? He was at Memphis. Memphis was good. Charlie Strong, South Florida, Texas, okay? You've seen all these guys jump from the AAC where they were just cleaning up and killing it and probably won a bowl game against an SEC team. Not their fault. And they probably walked into some really talented situations that were not being coached the right way. So you go crush that league for a couple, 3 years, and you make the jump, you make your payday, and except for Rule, all those guys have been whacked. And it comes down to where do you live? And where do you live now is the Big Ten. And it's for real. And it's taken this blowhard on the mic a lot of years to give its respect to the league. But, man, I do, because every Saturday is a bloodbath. To quote Mark Banker, just from a physicality standpoint and guys that are smart between the years, and they've coached 100 years. So ideally, when we talk about Nebraska's next move with assistants, can you get guys that know the Big Ten? Well, in a normal reset, let's put a staff together, yes. But it's going to be a hard sell because it might be a 1-year deal or it could be a multi-year deal where everyone gets paid because you bet on yourself and you won. And I just don't know. The name I keep hearing for offensive coordinator, and there's been some talk on the internet about Jake Peetz. Peetz is at LSU. Peetz is making $1.2 million a year. Peetz is the pride of O'Neill, Nebraska. Peetz is a guy that's been to a lot of spots, and he's been a quarterback coach with Del Rio for then the Oakland Raiders, all the way working his way up from quality control. He's been with Bama. I mean, he's been to a bunch of stops, And he went from the running backs coach, where he coached McCaffrey at Carolina, to taking an OC job with LSU. And LSU's been averaging about 17 to 20 points a ball game. But you know what type of bleep show that is down there with Orgeron and company. LSU is going to be very interesting here because you hear the name Mickey Joseph as well. So wide receivers coach, but possibility. Mickey was, a decent quarterback here in Lincoln, but he's been really a money wide receivers coach at LSU. When you look at all the dudes the Bayou Bengals have put into the NFL, I think it's going to be important to keep a guy on staff like Bill Bush. If you truly do give a damn about special teams, give him the job. I know he's an analyst, but make it full time and let him go rock and roll. How many guys are you going to be able to keep on your defensive staff? Let's ask that question. If Scott might have only a year, you better make a phone call if you're Trev Alberts and ask Mr. Chenander what he wants. So he ain't looking. And it's not like he'd leave because of loyalty to Scott. No, Chins has been busting his ass for a long time and doing an amazing job. And we've all given credit, but there needs to be some financial credit given to keep him around. If you're Travis Fisher, he's been sniffed around a lot by other programs, SEC programs. So there's that reality. Just because you've switched things. Yeah, that's the other part of this, getting rid of your 4 assistants. You could very well have punted on the defense if they didn't play so well this year or continue to make progress. But guess what? You got a bunch of super seniors to come back that has allowed you to groom guys behind them. So you'll have some first-year starters, but you're also going to have some second-year starters in Robinson, in Reimer, in Henrich. And then you got Caleb Tanner and Garrett Nelson. Don't know what D Boogie's going to do on the defensive line, but he's money too. You've seen guys get better with their first year as starter, and then they'll be more comfortable as a second-year starter. So there's just a lot of unanswered questions here. Let's talk about Trev and the reduction of salary. This was really good last night on the network with Trev talking about, all right, Scott, let's put your money where your mouth is. Let's bet on, you're going to bet on yourself? You're going to take the buyout to go away?
Scott's talked about how he bleeds for the Huskers, and this is important. And I think it was important to me when I look at good deals, good business deals. I rarely see a good business deal where only one party has skin in the game. But if both of us have skin in the game, we're both fairly incentivized to work really hard to be successful. And part of risk is mitigation of risk as well. And so having some understanding about some of the changes that Scott wanted to make, Scott was willing to reduce his salary next year to $4 million from $5 million. And then we've renegotiated his buyout for next year from $15 million to $7.5 million. And so I think those are two really important indicators about Scott's commitment. He's talked an awful lot about how important this is to him. And in a way, Scott's bet on himself. And I like that. And I think that's pretty cool. And so, like I said, Scott's probably a little bit uncomfortable. The university and I might be a little bit uncomfortable. And that's why I think we have a really good deal. And there's no guarantees of success, but I think this gives us the most reasonable chance to work together, all hands on deck, to see if we can execute his vision at a high level next year and keep making progress to getting Husker football back to where we'd all like it to be.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Jeff Smith on the way. Former Nebraska assistant coach for basketball. Hall of Fame coach for Lincoln Southeast. Get his take on the Big Red. And then it's a Tuesday with Kaz on Hail Varsity. Rick Kaczenski will join us at 5:25. Couple minutes left to get in this hour. It's 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. We'll also hear some thoughts coming up from Coach Hoiberg. Last thought here with Trev Alberts and loyalty, and we started the show off with, you have Nebraska, its regents, its financial brass, and its athletic director showing default loyalty. When in doubt, go with the Husker. They did that yesterday. and you have some questions about loyalty by not dismissing assistants on offense, but when you dismissed them. Okay. That's the rub. And you're going to have some work to do if you're Scott Frost with the offensive line. Because those guys loved Greg Austin. Can you get him up and get him ready by Wisconsin, by Iowa? But here is Trev on erroring, if there is an error in 2022, on the side of loyalty.
Well, like anything else in life, we've got a society that's probably going to be pretty divisive with any decision that's made. I've heard everything from I've set the program back 2 years to this is the right move. I've thought a little bit about this too, Greg. There are no easy answers. You make as well of a informed decision as you can given the data that you have at the time. And sometimes I think if a decision is hard to determine and you're not sure which way to go, Scott's one of us. He's a Nebraskan. He's a Cornhusker. He's a brother. And so if we're going to err, perhaps we err on the side of loyalty. You and I both have, and everybody in this department has a name tag, or whatever it's called, on our desk, and it has our core values underneath it, and loyalty is one of them. And so we're not going to be blindly loyal. I don't want to send that message. But if you're trying to balance one or the other, and we're going to err, I'd like to think as long as I'm here, we're going to err on the side of loyalty as best we can.
So Trev Alberts, super impressive last night with walking through the decision to retain, walking through the expectations for Nebraska football, walking through, Scott's reality, and that is to be a guy that is able to lead. And listen, guys, you've had enough pride and want to and grit with the kids on this team. They have fought for one another. They fought for themselves. They fought for their position coaches, and they fought for their head coach because they've not tapped out. But you're going to have to really put in a ton more elbow grease after these dismissals, and you got to get organized. And that's a big step into being back beyond 2022, your organization. Reminder about buckling up. 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, seatbelt can and will reduce risk of fatal injury by 60%. Your best defense is buckling up. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Coach Smith next hour.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Connor Clark. Give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at C_Clark_27. That's it, I promise, for his Twitter handle. Coming up, Rick Kaczenski. We welcome in Hall of Fame basketball coach, longtime assistant at Nebraska, and Hall of Famer with Lincoln Southeast. We say hi to Jeff Smith. Coach, it's basketball season all of a sudden. How you doing?
It is basketball season, thank goodness.
What, you telling me football wore you down just a touch?
Oh, a little bit. But, it's just a great time of year where football playoffs are coming up and, at the college level, and basketball's getting started, NBA's getting rolling. There's a lot of stuff to watch and entertain us.
It is, and there's so much to get to, and Nebraska moves on from preseason against Wayne State and the Colorado Buffaloes to now Western Illinois tonight. And I'm interested here. We'll go big picture and then little picture for tonight and tonight's matchup and action, but also just your outlook here for this Husker team. And I love talking to you about Big Red basketball. I love your connection to it. And I look at the athleticism and talent and depth and roster of this team, and it reminds me of some of the athletes and the talent you had during the years Nebraska really made some fun seasons memorable for a kid in Section B. That was me with your 90s teams. And do you see any parallels at all with just some of the talent and the options, the teams you helped coach and recruit to what you see? And I know that's a pressurized question, but do you see any parallels?
Oh, I definitely do. I think the depth is number one. I think that those early '90s teams, we had great competition because of our depth. We could find guys to come off the bench if somebody wasn't performing quite as well. It made practice competitive every day. We gained confidence as the season went and we got along well. And I see that with these guys too. And then I think the guard play. Some of those guys we had with Clifford Scales and Strickland and some of that group that came through in the 90s, athletic guards like I think Trey is and I think Alonzo Verge is, those similarities. I don't know if they're quite as strong inside, but the game isn't quite oriented that way anymore either.
No, you're right. I mean, you look at the NBA and you've got the stretches and the Durants of the world and 7-footers launching from three and a little less physicality, a little more athleticism and finesse is how you have some positionless basketball, right? I mean, that's just the way things have moved. And outlook-wise with the team, what's the ceiling here? Can it be an Andy Katz or a Goodman, shot in the dark projection of Nebraska's dancing as a 10 seed, or do you think that's a lot to ask for this squad this year?
No, I think it can be. I think I've always thought the last 2 years, Coach Hoiberg has created shots at the rim and threes. We just haven't been quite talented enough to consistently finish and knock down threes. I think they've added some of the shooters they need. I think they're a little more athletic and longer. So I'm hoping in those two areas with his system, I'm really hoping that's the case, that we can shoot a higher percentage consistently. And it showed against Colorado, if that can be a consistent factor, and finish better around the rim. If we do that plus rebound, I think we can be there nationally at least. We still might finish 7th or 8th in our league if we do well. But nationally, that probably gets you up close to a ranking and hopefully could get you in the tournament.
Jeff Smith is with us, former Nebraska assistant with basketball, Hall of Fame coach at Lincoln Southeast, with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. The season tipping off Nebraska, Western Illinois tonight at PBA. And talk to me about just Nebraska's transition and how back-breaking that can be in the Big Ten. And I know it's all keyed from rebounding, which is a point you just mentioned, glass. I mean, that's got to be emphasized. But, that whole process of getting the board and then the outlet, Nebraska's got to be scary good with some of their weapons, with some of their athletes in transition this year.
Yeah, everybody, and we've heard kind of the last couple of weeks, guards have to rebound, and they definitely do. Our guards are going to have to stay in there, and we always set a goal that they were trying to get at least 5 defensive boards,
okay.
And that's, if we can do that, we can key the break. And I like Coach Hoiberg; he'll let just about anybody take it. I don't know if Eduardo can, but they can take it. And that's an advantage to, some motivation for rebounding is go get the ball off the glass and then you can lead the break. And that's the pace he wants. That helps build the pace he wants if guys can just get it and go instead of always having to outlet the ball. And their versatility is such that they can do that. But yeah, I think they want to score 80, 90 points and be hard to guard in transition and shoot in transition and then chase it down. And, as many threes are being shot these days, rebounding is a little tougher because you're getting long rebounds and you've got to stay in and rebound.
What's the message and how did you approach talented kids either in high school or college for that balance of letting the game come to them versus forcing it?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. A lot of these guys are used to maybe taking over games, and I'm sure Bryce McGowan's is discovering that you've got to play harder than you did in high school, and you probably felt like you played hard in high school. I'm sure he did to get the numbers he did, but they're going to be physical against a kid like that. But if one of my sayings was play hard and good things happen. You're not going to be successful if you don't just start with that mantra of just giving it everything you have and doing the little things, and then good things will come to you. You might have to run the floor 10 times before you get rewarded to get that layup. You might have to box out 6-7 times before you finally get a good rebound and can go with it. But that level of intensity at the Division I, high Division I level is going to have to be immense, especially when we get in league play.
When you get to league play and even some of Nebraska's non-con, it's going to be about tempo and pacing, and teams are going to try and keep Nebraska out of rhythm. Do you worry about Nebraska's half court? And tell me a little bit about what Fred has this year at his disposal with what ideally he wants to do offensively.
Yeah, I watched him practice, and first of all, I was really impressed with the leadership of Trey McGowan and Derek Walker. It's nice to have some returning players that know the system. They know what's coming in the league. And like you said, we got a really, really nice schedule set up. We've got some games that hopefully, we play hard, that we can, Western Illinois and Samuel State, that we can win. And then you got a really good test with kind of a new Creighton team that developed recruited some new talent. And then again, you've got some games where you can just continue to get better with Idaho State. But then you've got, North Carolina State, Auburn, Kansas State, that are non-cons that are talented and going to be tests for us. And then, of course, this league's amazing. I think they have kind of a three-headed monster inside with Derek Walker, who's stronger this year, really good pick-and-roll guy and can finish inside. And I think we're going to have some really solid physical defensive work with him. They did a great job of doubling down in the Colorado game, and I hope they continue to do that. And then you can bring Breidenbach in, and he's a really versatile big that I think is physically prepared to defend inside some too. And then Eduardo might really come in handy if there's foul trouble and against some bigs with his length. He doesn't probably fit into the offensive scheme quite as well as Wilhelm does, but defensively and fundamentally, he's pretty sound. So those three guys are going to have to play big inside, and thank goodness we have three of them because I think we're going to need them all. But I think on the other end, if we can stick those shooters in the corners, if we can get Wilcher in the corner and Keisei Tamanaga in the corners, and those guys that can, and I've been really impressed with the kid that came from DePaul, Keon Edwards. I've been really impressed with him in practice and in those two exhibitions. Another 40% shooter. If they can spread people out and can consistently knock those shots down, then I think that opens it up for Alonzo Verge and the McGowan's brothers.
Tell me a little bit about Bryce and the 5-star hype and dealing with that, and just what would be a good season for him. We know that there's NBA aspirations. We know he's first-round draft board, but you still got to go perform, and he's the first to tell you that. What's fair for Bryce, and can you not ease in, but can you get more comfortable as the year goes on and just play versus all the noise that's out there?
Oh, definitely. And I've seen improvement already. I went to a July practice and was fortunate enough to watch him, and Bryce was kind of shooting a lot of NBA threes, wasn't really mixing it up physically. Really, that first practice, I didn't see him really put it on the floor and just attack. Went to the practice 3-4 weeks ago when they're in about the middle of their practice season schedule before the games, and he'd already started putting the ball on the floor a little bit more, getting an offensive rebound or two, not just looking for the three. And then he'll go through a learning curve where the physicality of the game's gonna take a toll on him a little bit. Being guarded by Big Ten level players and denying him the ball some, and he'll go through. But I would say anything average in double figures and shoot around 35-40% from the three and shoot around 50% from the two. And just be a complete player. Just show that. I think that's what I noticed about him is I think he has the ability to do everything. In fact, later in the Colorado game, they moved him to the point when they were sitting both the other two point guards, Verge and his brother, and he did a pretty good job at the point guard. I think he can play 4 positions, but I think he's got to maintain confidence. I think they got to be careful with his body because he doesn't weigh much, and if he's losing a lot of water weight and getting dehydrated, it's going to be a long season for him. But he's got a great ceiling, but he also has a lot to learn. I saw him in practice, and he missed a couple shots, and he hung his head. You don't have time to hang your head at that level. But again, I saw some improvement going into these exhibition games.
Jeff Smith, couple more minutes, previewing Nebraska basketball at Hail Varsity Radio. Coach Smith, longtime assistant at Nebraska, Hall of Fame high school coach, and he's with us. So, who's the straw that stirs the drink? Is it Verge? Is it Trey? Or is there a name I'm not mentioning here? Who's going to make this squad go?
Well, I always think a team's guards are kind of what makes them go. Obviously, you want a good big man, but I think Alonzo looks pretty dynamic with the ball in his hands. Looked like a guy that could maybe get shots at the end of the shot clock and create some shots. Really solid quickness and handles, and can score, but also can distribute. It looked like in those 2 games in the practice I saw, he was pretty complete. I think Trey McGowens will guard the point guard most of the time because his ball pressure it looks really solid, probably their best ball pressure defender. And so I really think it's those 2 that stirred up, plus Trey's leadership, plus how lucky are you when you're Bryce McGowens to have your brother there, keeping you confident and teaching you things about, this level of basketball. He's going to help his brother a great deal too. So I would start with those 2, and then I'd throw in Derek Walker's leadership. And if you are anywhere near the court, you hear Derek Walker talking. And if your big man is the best talker on the court, because he can usually see the whole court from the paint area, and he shows that ability to communicate really well with his teammates.
Coach, thought on tonight. What's a good performance look like for the Big Red? What are some keys?
Well, I think it's different. I know you played Colorado. I know you played Peru State, but it's different because everybody knows this is for real. So I think they just need to get off to a good start. Just good ball movement, because that's their mantra, is pushing the ball, and then quick movement and nobody trying to do too much early and letting the game come to them like you talked about. Establishing themselves on the boards so they can get it out and go, and putting some stops together so they can get it out and go. I mean, I think, I heard the spread was 16 or whatever, but I think, hopefully they can extend that and get out and play a lot of guys. But I think a good performance, any win at this level is good, and basketball's evened out. It used to be a pretty big split between the power conferences and the others, but I don't think it's that big of a split anymore. And I know Western Illinois has some good length and some bigs, so this will be a perfect test for them to come out. But I think with their ball pressure, with their ability to defend, and if they share the ball, 20, 25 points I'd be more than happy with that.
Well, that'll be good, and Creighton looms in about a week, and we'll gear up and be on the road for that down in the Haymarket. So excited for it. Coach, always love catching up. Can't wait to do some ball with you again this winter. And thanks for your insight, as always. Appreciate your time today.
Love talking hoops, Chris.
All right, Coach. Well, I love hearing you give us your thoughts. You take care and have a good night tonight.
You too.
All right. Jeff Smith with us, Hall of Fame basketball coach, Lincoln Southeast, longtime assistant with Nebraska basketball during that golden era, the knee era, and his perspective is so incredible. Good stuff from Coach. We will be sure to hear from Coach Kaczenski here shortly, because that's where we're going to be. Get Kaz's take, a Tuesday with Kaz. Mitch Sherman in the first hour. Be sure to check that out on the on-demand page, ESPNLincoln.com, and also, for sure, find us on Twitter at ESPN Lincoln. Coach Kaz next on Hail Varsity.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Some football thoughts here as another Tuesday with Kaz. Rick Kaczenski joins us, Nebraska and Iowa. Kaz, getting down to it. It's November football, and 24 hours removed from all the news with Nebraska. You have Coach Frost back for 2022, and you have 4 of his offensive assistants shown the door in season. Coach, have you ever been a part of something like that where the head guy tells guys that have been with him for most of, if not all of his career, at least the last stop, hey, thanks for everything, see you before the season's done?
Hey, Schmitty. Hey, thanks for having me on again. But, excuse me, to answer that question, no, very fortunate that I had never been in that situation. The guys, guys I worked for, there wasn't anybody fired on the staffs that I was a part of. I know Coach Holtz, there was a couple times where he made life difficult on guys, but he wasn't going to put them on the street, and he helped them find guys, or he helped them find jobs, said positive things about them, that type of stuff. But that's 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I know times change, people change, all that stuff. That I guess that's just part of college football these days, I guess. I don't think it's right. I don't know what benefit you have by two weeks left, 2 games left in the season, and all of a sudden that those 4 coaches don't fit into your vision for I guess next year, and then who's coaching them? I know you got Coach Brown there that can take the reins. Excellent coach, excellent person, excellent recruiter, but who's coaching these guys? Who's coaching the O-line? These next 2 games, I'm assuming they're pretty important to Nebraska. I know they're important to Wisconsin and Iowa. So what the hell are you doing these next 2 games? And what about the players, man? Everybody, it's all BS. Oh, student athletes, you get all kind of people, talking heads, student athletes. If you tell me one reason how this decision benefits the student athletes with 2 games left, and I'll cover your mortgage for the next 12 months. So that's how confident I feel that you'd have a difficult time hedging that wager with finding a positive for the players. So I don't like the decision. I thought it was disappointing. And what the hell do you get out of it? So fortunately, Schmitty never been a part of that. Just never been a part of that, and blessed to not be a part of that.
Rick Kaczenski's with us. What's the coaching fraternity's reaction likely to be? And I'm asking for you to speak for a lot of folks that have done a lot of time in headsets and late night meetings and game planning. And I mean, you guys grind as coaches and as mentors to these student athletes. I mean, it can't be well received when it looks like you're throwing your guys under the bus and then hitting reverse after you drive over them.
Yeah, and I was talking to a guy that coached in the NFL a bunch of years and been a coordinator at some Power 5 schools yesterday, and the conversation. The first thing he said, he actually notified me. First thing he's like, "Did you see that?" I looked it up real quick. I said, "You got to be kidding me!" And he says, and the words out of his mouth were, "Can you believe he did that?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Do you know him at all?" I'm like, "No." I go, "But that tells me all I need to know, man." And this guy was his last big time gig was in the Big 12, and he just said, what he said to me was, he goes, "That'd be like me as the defensive coordinator firing my entire defensive staff for running my defense." He goes, "That would kind of be an indictment on me, wouldn't you think?" So, obviously, obviously, when you look outside the footprint of Nebraska, and I'm sure there's people there that, hey, agree with the decision, got to do right thing and taking steps, and now all of a sudden there's this new vision, right? Well, where the hell was that last year? Where was it 2 years ago? Now all of a sudden that Trev's there. You got a new vision, and I'm not bashing Scott. Heck, it's it's his name, it's his program. You got to do what you do. But I don't know. I just don't. I don't get it. I've never been in that position. And I know talking with head coaches, things change when you're sitting in that chair, and you got to make really, really, really difficult decisions. But I don't know how Nebraska benefits. I don't know how the players benefit. And, you think that makes it attractive to guys that are going to want to come there? I mean, you think it's attractive to a high school junior right now? You think those guys feel pretty confident that Scott Frost is going to be the head coach from now? And if you don't think people aren't throwing darts at Nebraska, who they're recruiting against, you're nuts. And people are saying that right now. So I think globally it's real easy to throw darts at Scott and easy to throw darts at the program. But that's, to me, if you're going to get rid of 4 guys, get rid of them all. I mean, that staff is 15 and 27. Here's the deal. The other team, the object is to have the other team score less than you. All right, it's a team game. What are we doing on special teams? I don't know. I mean, those are the questions when you're talking about getting text and having conversations with guys that are still in the business. That I know. I mean, that's the stuff that they're looking like, and they're saying, yeah, good luck. Who's going to come there? So you're going to hire a coordinator from somewhere. He's not even going to move his family. He's going to be living in the Cornhusker for 10 months. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You're looking down the barrel of that right now. I mean, of those situations. So. And obviously it's a little bit closer to home to coaches because there's people involved, there's families involved, and no matter what you make and, no matter what people say, that's part of the business or whatever, when it happens, it's hard, man. Go tell your 7th grade daughter that, hey, you're going to hey, after Christmas, you're going to be going to another school. I'm not quite sure what town. I'm not quite sure where we're going to live. And hey, I'm going to get paid for another 6 months or whatever. And I'm sure Nebraska took care of those guys. Nebraska's a great place to be fired. That's the one positive there. So if you're going to get fired, that's where you want to be fired from. But those things are tough, and people are pretty cavalier about just, fire this guy, fire that guy, and it's part of the business. Well, I hope they never have to have those conversations with their kids, because it's a tough deal, man.
Rick Kaczenski's with us. Few minutes here, Tuesdays with Kaz at Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, I want to spend a little bit of time on Coach Austin, who the offensive line's been piled on a lot this year, and just focus in on kind of Greg's history, his reputation, and specifically what he was trying to do. It's real easy to look at the pass protection and the lack of consistency in running, and I know that's his unit. He's the first to stick up for his guys, and I just dug a little deeper with the reality that Nebraska's been playing young guys, and I know it's the coach's job to get the young better. I get it, but you can't microwave the lines of scrimmage. And I just look at some of the lines that Nebraska had while you were at Nebraska, and even some of your Iowa lines, and you guys did a hell of a job of developing guys, and even if a young guy was in, there wasn't 4 of them. Okay? I mean, there maybe was one, and I think Greg's going to find another coaching job. I think Greg's going to be fine, and he was always, a good dude to me. But I just think it was a little unfair. And I know I got a microphone and I'm talking. I'm like, why the hell are there 50% pressure rates on drawbacks. I mean, all of that. I mean, the kids were trying. It just didn't seem to fit with what they had versus what they wanted to run. And specifically, a lot of pressure was put on the O-line.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I watched South Carolina a little bit, and I was fortunate enough to have access to some of their early practices and saw the struggles they had up front. And they're older but inexperienced, and they're always trying to find the right combination. But I remember watching them against Georgia and playing against those aliens up front, and there was no help. They didn't give those guys any help. Every time you looked up, I mean, it was both tackles were on an island. And I know, hey, it's SEC, it's Power 5, it's Big Ten, but you got to do stuff to help those guys. There's ways to turn the protection. I can tell you, people game plan for Randy Gregory, people game plan for Adrian Claiborne. Adrian Claiborne's fifth year and Randy Gregory's junior year, they were better players, but not statistically, because people game planned for them differently. I mean, Illinois was lining up with a tight end and a wing back to his side in pass pros. So what I didn't see as an offense, and once again, I'm watching it on TV, sure. Right? And it's you don't, and I'm not in those conference rooms. So nobody knows what's going on except those guys in there. But I'm looking in there saying, what are you doing to help these guys? And I'm talking about schematically. Are you chipping with the back? I mean, do you need to get 5 receivers? Do you need to get 4 receivers in the back out? Are you dual reading with the center? Are you throwing hot? I mean, there's so many things that you can do, especially when you're in these type of leagues, because no matter how good you are, at some point somebody's going to need help. There's going to be a matchup that somebody's going to need help with. No matter how good you can be, a first-team all-conference player, you're going to need some help along the way every once in a while. So that's what I didn't see. And once again, I'm watching from TV. I'm not in those staff rooms. So, I preface with that. I don't know what's going on, but.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
I heard last spring and all summer, downhill. I just don't see that. And being a dude that coached O-line, that, played a fullback, played a tight end, and played an offensive line, I went downhill a lot, straight ahead, really fast with like 5 and 6 other guys that were going really fast. I got a pretty good idea what downhill looks like and feels like. And when I put Nebraska on TV, I don't feel downhill. As a coach, there's times, there is times, Schmitty, where sometimes a scheme, all right, sometimes circumstances can make a good coach just not be successful. Sometimes it just doesn't line up. I mean, take Nebraska. Bill Callahan, if I'm not mistaken, was in a Super Bowl. If I'm not mistaken, Frank Solich played for a national championship a couple years before he got fired. If I'm not mistaken, Bo was in the NFL for 9 years and won more games in his span than Oregon and Alabama. Those were the only 2 other programs that had won 9 or 10 for 7 years straight. Scott Frost was undefeated. The only guy who was a slap was Mike Riley, right? I mean, he was what he was, and that's what you got, right? I mean, so all of a sudden these guys didn't become bad coaches, right? I mean, sometimes there's a lot more that comes into it. It's not like, oh gosh, man, they fooled everybody till they got to Nebraska. Come on, man. So, when I'm looking at Greg Austin, here's a guy that went from getting a job offer from the Buffalo Bills, hey, man, I know the Big Ten. I mean, shoot, man, there was guys. Ryan Day was trying to get this guy. This guy's had job offers, and he'll be fine. He'll be 100% fine. But, it's just like Schmitty 2010, I didn't become a bad coach 3 years later. I had to develop some guys, and I was in a different defense, and, so that's it. But I didn't change the way I coached. I mean, you're always tweaking things and all that, but sometimes it has to do with your surroundings. So I don't think Greg Austin is a bad coach, but when I look at what was going on schematically, I didn't see a whole hell of a lot of help for those young guys, right? What's your go-to, man? What's your 3rd and 1 where the defense knows what you're running, the offense knows what they're running, and you're just lining up and saying, here, we stop that. And I think when you go through the Big Ten, I think you see an identity, not just in the run game, but in people's offenses. Is there any mystery to what Iowa is? Is there any mystery to what Wisconsin is? I mean, that's downhill, guys. And Nebraska doesn't look like those two teams. You look what Brett's doing. Nebraska doesn't look like what Illinois is trying to do, right? I mean, does Braum have an identity? 100%, 100%. So to me, when I look at this offensive staff, they're in a tough spot, man. Because you're recruiting and you're coaching, but kind of what are you, right? And Frost, it's his offense. It's his offense, man. So my thing is that's kind of a little bit of an indictment when they're coaching your offense and you're running your offense and you had to fire 4 guys, man. I just think that's a little bit of an indictment on the system. And it might have worked at UCF, but this is the Big Ten, man. And all due respect, there's some great coaches in that league, but this is the best coached league in the country, man. I mean, this is big boy ball. This is big ball coaching, man. These dudes, they'll find every single weakness and exploit it. And to me, that's the type of stuff that happened. And I think that's why there's been such a lack of success. But when I this isn't that record just isn't an offensive problem, Schmitty. I hope people understand that. And I hope Nebraska I just been hearing way too much of this, losing close. I mean, come on, guys, talking preseason, if we can get to a bowl game and then during the season, hopefully we can get 6. And then now mid-season, it became, not getting blown out. I mean, whoa. Come on, man. That's the standard. That's not acceptable. I don't like that rhetoric, and I'm hearing a little bit too much of that there. So, I'm sorry to be so dang negative today, but when you got 4 guys on the street, and it's a little bit disappointing to me.
Kaz, we'll get you out of here on this, and thanks for your time, man. So, how and why can it work in year 5 with these changes? Obviously, you want to bring the right people in, but ultimately, can Scott change what he's doing on offense to be Big Ten functional?
Well, I think once again, it goes back to your identities. Right now, you got guys that you're going to be playing with next year that you recruited 3-4 years in the program. I mean, coordinators, they recruit to guys to their system. So here's what I don't think is going to happen. When you have a guy whose back is against the wall, fighting for his job, you mean to tell me he's going to let the reins off? That he's just going to he's going to put his future and his name in some nameless coordinator that you don't know that's going to be living in the Cornhusker Marriott and coming to Lincoln? I mean, would you let that happen? Absolutely not. So I find it hard to believe that he's just going to be completely hands off. So the hard part of this stuff working, let's give me some examples of it working. right? And I know people will Michigan. Okay, well, all due respect to Nebraska, Michigan's been winning a lot of games, but with the exception of the COVID year, Michigan's won. They just haven't beat Ohio State. Well, who has? Who has? Okay, there ain't many people beating Ohio State. I think Day, if I'm not mistaken, is undefeated in the Big Ten.
He is.
And he's been there 2 years. Yeah, so, I understand that. That's Michigan's rival, but nobody's beaten Ohio State. Nobody. And it rarely happened before. And when you look at Michigan, Michigan's far and above. They're ahead. They're ahead. I think when you look at Michigan, and I think probably what hurt Harbaugh at one point was when he had musical chairs where he kept changing kind of what they wanted to be. And I think when you look at Harbaugh now, I think he's what he was at Stanford. I think he's what he was at the 49ers. They're kind of boring to watch. Good Lord. I watched them Saturday night, and even when they were scoring, or couples, when they played Indiana, what a boring game. What a boring offense, but it works. That's their identity, right? And it's Michigan. They got guys that fit that identity, and it's easier to recruit at. I mean, they got dudes.
Rick Kaczenski, a few more minutes here. We'll wind down a Tuesday with Hail Varsity Radio, and we're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Kaz, good enough to give us some thoughts on the assistant moves yesterday by Coach Frost. We'll finish up with him next.
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Nebraska doesn't have a Hutchinson. Nebraska doesn't have two backs like those two dudes, right? I mean, I think Nebraska's got some tight ends. Mm-hmm. They got an offensive line, but I think what Michigan did was they helped those guys. They simplified that offense. Get lined up, put your hand in the dirt, and we're firing off, and we're gonna run up your tail with these two strong big running backs, and we're gonna fall forward, and it's gonna be 2nd and 6, and then we're gonna max protect, and we're gonna run post dig 2-man routes. That's what we're gonna do, take shots. So I think, I think Florida's in that situation. If that works at Florida, I'll pay 2 years mortgage for you. Okay. I mean, it's a guy. I mean, him and Hevesy, they go back. And that's what's sad about college football. I mean, coaches are paid handsomely, but man, I mean, where is the loyalty, man? I mean, where is the loyalty? I mean, it just, the guys I worked for would never, ever, ever do that. And thank God. I mean, I worked for some unbelievable guys, and that's not a shot at anybody's character at all. I understand it. I do. I don't like it, but I get it. But man, fortunately, I was on some staffs that won enough games. We didn't have to worry about that. And, but man, Schmitty, how's it going to work? Why is it going to work? You look at the guys that have been keeping Nebraska in these games. A lot of them dudes ain't going to be here next year, brother. You're going to get a glimpse of life without JoJo Doman. You're going to get Cam Taylor-Britt. I think the safety is his name, Williams. Yep.
Deontay.
Ben Still. Yeah, you're losing some dudes, man. I mean, you're losing some dudes. I know Adrian makes some mistakes, but he's a playmaker, and your backup quarterback hasn't gotten many snaps because all the games are closed. So, you're going in, and the reason I just think there's more reasons why it's not going to work than I see it working. And, hopefully I'm wrong, man, but, we'll just have to wait and see. But, you're going to get the same rhetoric. We're going to be downhill. We're going to be this. We're going to be that. And then, you know what? You come out in the fall and it looks the same. So when you got 4 falls that looks the same, I can't imagine a 5th fall looking a whole lot whole lot of different there, boss man.
Kaz, always love catching up, brother. We'll do this next week for Wisconsin Week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
You got it, bud. Thank you.
Good stuff from Coach Kaz, his take, his perspective on just the topic of change. It is here, and is it going to be for the better? You hope that as a Nebraska fan. Some of you wanted Scott back for a fifth year. Some of you didn't. But the reality is you have Scott back for a fifth year. So how is it going to look better a year from now, where maybe as a Nebraska fan you're excited about going into the Wisconsin-Iowa Black Friday dance slugfest, and you're sitting at 7 wins, 8 wins, maybe better. Maybe you're still sitting at 5. Maybe you're sitting at 4. I don't know. Time will tell. But all those things that Kaz touched on are hard to hear for some Nebraska fans with just the reality. But you've got time. You've got time, and you've made changes, and you've got a plan, and you got a vision. Now you got to execute. Some thoughts on Husker Hoops tomorrow back at 4. Thanks.